episode 99 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 28th of September 2020. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Partying like it's 99.
Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Good evening.
So here we are. The nights are drawing in. It's cold and dark. But the good news is I've got my tax bill and it's only $750. So it's
You must have done well this year.
Yeah, I did really well, yeah. Tremendously well. Anyway, let's start with a bit of news then. And the first is some gaming news, a couple of stories here from you, Graham, that I have no idea about. The first one is Amnesia is now open source.
This is the source code to a game called Amnesia Dark Descent, which was produced by Frictional Games. I think maybe it was published about 8 years ago. Frictional have always supported Linux. It's one of the games publishers we always kind of like to review back in the magazine days. But more importantly, the games are really, really good. They have their own kind of custom engine. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head now, that lets you interact like physically with 3D objects in the 3D environment the games involve. But they're kind of horror jump scare games that are actually very, very good if you've not played them before. So this open sourcing doesn't include the assets. It's basically just the source code to the game. So it's going to be of interest to people who maybe want to understand how games work or create their own games based on the same engine.
You know that joke about Linux and games engines?
Which one?
The one that there's just a load of games engines and no games.
Oh, right, yeah. But this is GPL v3, so people can't just take it and put it into proprietary games. If they're going to use the engine and stuff, they're going to have to make it open source, which is, I suppose, good.
Yeah, that's true. But I think it's good from an educational perspective. I think it's good that the game's reached its end of life, and rather than letting it sit on their servers or waiting for, the retro scene to develop in 25 years, they've released a source code now. Yeah.
And so BBC Micro Elite source code as well. This is slightly older then.
Yeah, so this is, I don't think this isn't GPL'd or anything. And in fact, I think it's kind of on some tentative permissions of Ian Bell and David Braben, the two original developers of Elite. So this game is one of the classics from 1984, initially released on the BBC microcomputer and the Acorn Electron on the first day, I learned today. And anybody of a certain age will have wasted far too many hours playing this in their youth. It's an amazing space trading, open-ended, kind of a simulator. It felt like a simulator at the time, an incredible game. I should really credit the person who's done all this work. Mark Moxon has disassembled the 6502 code for the game because it was all written in assembler to squeeze everything out of the hardware. And as a writer, Mark has commented on every single block of code, reverse engineered exactly what it's doing, which is quite tricky with assembler, and then created this wonderfully descriptive text to describe exactly how the game is working, the kind of variables involved. Look at the trading code, for example, to see how it works out the tonnage of the craft that you're flying versus what you're trying to buy, whether you're trying to buy gems. And it all kind of, for this game, which is now really an artifact of gaming, It's just a really brilliant historical piece of work. It's great.
It's a very cool site, though. I mean, it's awesome to be able to step through that stuff and just the sheer complexity of a program like that, and then the most awful, awful development environment that you could possibly imagine.
I mean, there are some kind of retro gaming environments, but it really makes you appreciate that working within those restrictions basically create some of the best kind of games. There's such finely tuned playability. Or maybe I just sound like an old person saying that.
It's no Oculus, whatever you've got, though, is it?
Well, Elite Dangerous is one of the best games you can play in VR. It really is. It's like if you are a child growing up with Elite, and then you put on this kind of VR headset and you dive into the Elite Dangerous universe, it's just mind-blowing.
Is it like stepping into Tron?
It's better than stepping. Have you seen Tron recently? God. Although there's no anti-aliasing in Tron, I must admit they got the vectors right, but it's mind-blowing compared to the graphics in Tron. Music's not as good.
All right, well, a bit of Mozilla hate then, shall we? There was a post by Cal Peterson that has been going around over the last couple of weeks, and it's called Firefox usage is down 85% despite Mozilla's top exec pay going up by 400%. And there's a graph there with the two plotted quite tactically in an X shape where it just shows the usage of Firefox just going down and the pay of Mitchell Baker going up and up and up to $2.5 million. And it's a very scathing piece about Mozilla and wasting of money, essentially, and far too much bureaucracy and not enough actually doing what they should be doing. And I feel it kind of echoes a lot of what a lot of people have been saying.
And it also makes me wonder, why the hell is Mitchell Baker still there?
It is a good question. And Cal asks the question of, like, what is that pay rise linked to? Like, what performance metric is it? It's clearly not the market share of Firefox, which, according to the stat counter data that he uses, has gone from around about 30-ish% back in 2009 to under 5% in 2019. That's the market share. And, you know, at 30%, that's reasonable and you can have a good influence, but at under 5%, and that's on desktop, never mind the piss poor performance on mobile, Firefox is irrelevant now, isn't it? I mean, surely that's what that graph says to you. It's irrelevant, and yet somehow Mozilla have been making all this Google money and spending it on what exactly?
Oh, well, that page that you linked to of all the shocking fucking projects that have been killed by Mozilla. And I don't even know half of these. Yeah,
killed by Mozilla. It's kind of inspired by killed by Google. It's not quite as graphically rich, shall we say, and they didn't specify a background color, so marks down from me. But there's a lot of stuff on there that I just haven't heard of hardly any of it, really. And yeah, all that stuff has had money spent on it. Is it fair to say that we are just watching the demise of Mozilla now, the slow demise?
I really hope not. I mean, the last time this came up, I swore and was quite angry, and I am still equally angry. And I think it's kind of the proof that the browser itself is not a priority. And that's the thing that we should be angry about. And I think it just needs better leadership, or at least Firefox does. If Mozilla thinks it doesn't need the browser, let the browser free. But yeah, I think it's a damning indictment of their lack of priority for the browser.
And I don't even think it's that much of a slow demise. I think it's pretty rapid now. I don't think that last 5% can stick around. I think that even the diehards, which probably make up 1% of all the browsers, well, less than that actually, are going to lose faith very soon. And we've been saying it on this show for a while now. As Graham just said, why are they not focusing on the browser? Why are they trying all these other things? And yeah, I agree. I think that this is that experiment writ large, and it's failed, and they need to get back on to focusing on their core strengths, if the browser is indeed a core strength anymore.
Because we're going to get to a stage, aren't we, where there are so few people using Firefox that loads and loads of websites are just going to not work. And we'll just get back to that situation where it's, best viewed in IE, whatever, 5 or 6. And you just won't really be able to access a lot of stuff. I find that increasingly, actually, that there's websites that just don't work properly. And I can put up with it most of the time, but then there'll be even like government websites and stuff where it just doesn't render properly, or you can't input the data or something, and it just gets frustrating. And fire it up in Chrome, it's going to work perfectly because that's what the devs tested it in.
I think generally speaking, the web community has learned from the bad old days of IE6 and do put more effort into testing cross-browser. But you're absolutely right. There are going to be more and more bugs slipping through the net because they haven't actually tested it on Firefox. That a robot has tested it on Firefox because none of the devs are running it as their daily driver.
Phelim, what's it going to take for you to switch away?
I mean, I haven't experienced any websites that don't work with Firefox yet. I guess that's because of the websites I go to. I mean, I'm in a lot of cases prepared to not go to a website if they, aren't going to work. Like, I haven't used Google Maps in a long time because there was definitely something that didn't work with Firefox, so I just stopped using it. I used OpenStreetMap. It's fixed now, but I'm a very, very small minority, I imagine, that is prepared to walk if they're not prepared to support me. And I think they should support a standard. And, if people are using WebKit, pre-picked sort of before the standard has been set ones, then they kind of I guess, excluded by it. But I mean, it's not a standard yet, so why are you using it? But I mean, that's just the way things happen, I guess, these days. I really don't know, because I don't know where I could go. That's the other problem. Like, I'm not going to use Edge. I don't care if it's on Linux. I'm just not going to use it. It's not going to happen. And I'm not going to use Chrome. And by that extension, Chromium, because when it's built, it has to be built with all their tools. It might as well be the same thing almost. So I really don't know where I'm going.
What do you think's going to happen with Edge? Is anybody going to use it on Windows, let alone, I mean, no one's going to use it on Linux, I don't think, but will they just struggle? Is that fight over now and people will just stick with Chrome?
No, I don't think so at all. I think Microsoft are positioning it as a Blink-based alternative to Chrome. You don't want to trust those Google people with all their privacy invading bullshit. Use this serious business Edge browser, which ticks all the right boxes on the compliance form. Use that along with Office 365 and the antivirus and all the rest of it. And it doesn't matter what platform you're on, it'll be available for it. I think that's the plan. And I think that there will be enterprise users using it. I don't think many hobbyists or whatever will touch it with a barge pole, but the people who are sort of forced by IT departments to run antivirus and stuff on Linux, which does happen, believe me, I think they're the kind of people who are going to end up being forced to use it.
That's the real problem here, is that rather than the web being a set of standards, it then becomes Blink. And Blink is controlled by Microsoft and by Apple and by Google. We will find it very difficult to have any say in it, despite the fact it's, originated with Lars Knoll and KHTML. That's what's so sad about this.
I feel somewhat responsible for my own demise.
Okay. This episode is sponsored by Datadog, the monitoring and analytics platform for comprehensive visibility into your Linux environment. By uniting metrics and events from servers, databases, applications, and more, Datadog can easily give you a unified view into your entire infrastructure. Easily identify hidden sources of latency, like overloaded hosts, by monitoring server metrics alongside application data. With machine learning-based alerts and features like anomaly detection, Datadog can also help you to monitor and alert on the health of your servers in real time without alert fatigue. Start your Datadog trial today by visiting datadog.com/late-night-Linux. Start your free trial, create one dashboard, and you'll get a free Datadog t-shirt. That's datadog.com/late-night-Linux. So the Internet Archive is teaming up with Cloudflare in what's being dubbed a failover deal. So it's kind of one of those business deals that involves synergy and stuff, I think, where Cloudflare has this caching service where if your website is offline, then it will just serve a kind of static cached version of it. And someone over there thought, hang on, the Wayback Machine does pretty much the same thing. Why don't we team up with them and have corporate synergy? I don't know what to make of this, because I've got a lot of respect for archive.org. The organization seems to do a lot of good, but there's just something about Cloudflare that rubs me the wrong way. I haven't got any evidence, and I've talked about it many times. I don't know what it is about Cloudflare, but there's just something I don't like about it. And so this makes me a little bit uncomfortable somehow.
Yeah, I'm in exactly the same boat as you. On the one hand, this is really great for the Wayback Machine, and I love perusing what's on there from 20 years ago or something. It's fascinating. And that means that not all of the websites, a majority of websites that are using Cloudflare will be preserved for posterity. But exactly as you say, the other side of the coin is, Cloudflare though, isn't it?
Mm.
It's the same as Google creating this amazing email that you could access through a browser, and what harm can it do? It's all moving towards it. But I mean, it's good. It's good as in a way. Also, the lawsuit that's basically been threatening an Internet Archive. It's another way of kind of supporting the initiative, which I agree with Will is a really great initiative with the Wayback Machine. It's a really important one. But can it tear itself away? Probably not. Not in the way that Cloudflare works.
It must be incredibly expensive to run archive.org. So I choose to believe that Cloudflare supporting this project is going to be good for the project, and so I'm okay.
Yeah, I think on the balance of things, it is a good thing, but it does make me feel slightly uncomfortable. Phelim, I assume you have Cloudflare in front of all of your websites that you look after, do you?
Absolutely. Don't you believe it? Yeah, no, I don't. I definitely don't like Cloudflare. I mean, I can see the point in requiring a CDN or load balancer or whatever, but yeah, they're in an awful powerful position and in front of an awful lot of websites to the point where the internet has ceased to be fault tolerant, because if they go down, then everything else goes down with it, and you're left with about 5% of the internet still working fine. And yeah, again, it's not anti-American, but it's an American company with all the CIA entailed sort of rules, regulations, and things like that. So I don't know. It seems a bit too one country centric, one provider centric, and yeah, I'm not overly keen on that.
I remember you singing the praises of Cloudflare, Graham, back in the day when you put it in front of the Linux. Was it Linux Voice site?
Yeah, that's true. But then we were it was just us running the website, and we had a magazine to produce, and we were getting loads of DDoS attacks against the server, and just using the free Cloudflare service, just putting it behind Cloudflare solved all those problems for us and solved the problems of us having to sysadmin and all that.
Well, yeah, that's why it's attractive to people. It's just a very easy way to look after your website.
And I do trust Cloudflare with DNS more than I would trust Google with DNS.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know who I trust less, Google, Cloudflare, or my ISP.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. We talked, I don't know, last summer, I think, about the UK ISP Association voting Mozilla Internet Villain of the Year because they'd enabled DNS over HTTPS. So I think that tells you how reputable and out for their own interests the UK ISPs are.
Yeah.
I know this is an aside, but John Graham Cumming is like the CTO at Cloudflare, and he makes a lot of sense. And I just kind of, especially with the Alan Turing thing and other things he got involved with, I don't know. Am I being naive, hoping that people do the right thing? Probably I am.
Well, I don't think that you necessarily have to have nefarious motivations to do bad things. It's that whole Jurassic Park thing. They never stopped to consider if they should do it because they were too busy thinking about whether they could. Or I'm paraphrasing badly there, but you know what I mean? Like, they have put themselves in this incredibly powerful position with regards to the web and maybe didn't stop to think about what the consequences of that could be.
The way for companies, there's a certain percentage of a company has to be before it becomes a public rated company. Maybe there's a certain percentage of the internet that a company has to be before it becomes a public sort of body where, you don't get to be a company who's driven by profit completely only.
It becomes sort of a utility.
Yeah, utility. Exactly. I've solved it. There we go. Job done.
On to a bit of admin then. And first of all, thank you everyone for supporting us on PayPal and Patreon. It is really appreciated. If you want to join those people, you can go to latenightlinux.com/support. And if you support us for $5 or more on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed, so check that out. And if you want to get in contact, latenightlinux.com/contact. A quick update on Late Night Linux Extra and the Kyle situation. We didn't do an episode last week because he was too busy and hadn't installed it yet. He was going to install KDE Neon. He ended up going for Kubuntu in the end and said it was a bit buggy. And then he went for Zorin, and I think he's getting on better with that. But he still likes a moan.
He just couldn't do the right thing. He had to go with his own idea and do the wrong thing, and then he could moan about it, no doubt.
Yeah, I don't know. Even I'm getting a bit sick of his fucking moaning, to be honest. So we'll see how it goes, really. If he's got some good things to say after he's lived with it for a while, we'll see. But he's been really busy, and I've been really busy as well. So I don't know when the next one of those will be, but stay tuned anyway. We might be back or we might not. But yeah, sorry about the... we said that we would... I think we said we'd hopefully be back and then we weren't. So we didn't break any promises. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that. We did those Ask Us Anything questions, Ask Us Anything Sensible. And that got me thinking that maybe we should have more from the audience, more feedback. So do get in touch with us if you've got questions or suggestions for stuff we should talk about or whatever. latenightlinux.com/contact, as I said. And yeah, we're not going to read everything out, obviously, but if there's certain interesting things that people write to us about, then yeah, we might cover it on the show. Okay, this episode is sponsored by Entroware. Go to entroware.com. Entroware sells computers with Ubuntu and Ubuntu Mate pre-installed. They've got a range of desktops, laptops, and servers, and most parts are configurable, so you can pick the CPU, RAM, and storage that's right for you. If you can't find exactly what you want, then do contact them, and they'll work with you on a bespoke solution that's perfect for your needs. They ship to the UK, Republic of Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. And if you do buy one of their machines, there's a little drop-down at checkout, and you can select Late Night Linux, so they'll know that we sent you. So go to entroware.com for all your Linux computing needs. So, Phelim, just before we started recording, you told us you'd been playing with WireGuard, and I said, no, stop, save it for the show. So why have you been playing with WireGuard, first of all?
So I'm incredibly lazy, and every time I need to access a site, I will generally use either SSH tunnels or SS shuttle or S shuttle or whatever it's called, the, sort of very easy, get it done over SSH VPN. But I had to set up a VPN for a client, and I had a look at OpenVPN and IPsec, which I have set up before, and I just lost the will to live looking at them because they're goddamn awful. And sooner than try to actually read through docs on that again, I decided I'd try WireGuard. And it was too easy. So easy, in fact, that I didn't think I was doing it right. And I was convinced there was something missing. And I spent ages looking around for clearly how I was doing this wrong.
You say it was too easy. What was involved in setting it up and installing it and everything then?
So the site I was putting onto didn't have a firewall that could understand it. So luckily enough, there was a Linux server inside the network. Well, it was actually a workstation. The whole concept of server workstation doesn't really matter. A device inside the network, essentially, that you let a port through to, and you put basically about 5 lines of code for that machine. You create 2 keys with 2 simple commands, and then you can either on that machine or on the other machines generate the public-private key pairs, which is dead simple. It's literally create a file owned 600 mode, and then dump the file, the private key into that, and then from that generate a public key. So that's literally 2 commands, dead easy. And each of those machines has about 5 lines of text, and then the sort of server machine has a listing of all of those peers that are going to join into it. So the way I was setting up was like a sort of a hub machine with various spoke machines linking into it. And you create a virtual network. So it can be whatever IP range you want. And then they can either talk on that network between each other, or you can limit them to just be allowed to talk to the server itself. But essentially, yeah, that's it. You've done it. And you can either have them ship all their traffic through that link or just that network range traffic, and that's you done. And I set this up it was on an Ubuntu machine in the office, opened 1 port on the firewall, and then a various mix of OS 10, Linux, and Windows 10 laptops connected into it. And you download the Mac one from the App Store, you get the Windows one from the WireGuard.com website, and it's already built into Ubuntu, so you're already sorted if you've anything that's sort of related to that, and there's various other distros that are supported too, and you're done. It's too easy.
Is it built into Network Manager?
I believe it is, yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's built into KDE as well. I mean, to be honest though, like it's a text file with 4 lines text, so I mean, if you can't manage that, I think you probably should stick away from VPNs, but yes, I am sure it is fully supported in the GUI as well. I just didn't do that. The hardest thing I found was shipping the key. So the Windows one is a bit of a flaw in the fact that by default, the Windows client doesn't have the key generation tools. There's an extra package you have to build, and I just wasn't going near that. So I said, look, I'll just generate it on the Ubuntu server machine, and then that's it. And I used TeamViewer to essentially dump that config into a text file. And the hardest part was fucking Windows with its hidden file extensions keep calling my .com file, .com.text, and just fuck right off Windows, honestly.
Yeah, that is one of the most annoying things in Windows, having to go into folder options and show...
It doesn't look like that. Every version is so different. You just don't know, like, so you're just left there going, oh, I know how to fucking do this, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I've had with OpenVPN in the past, apart from the 2,000 different options, was trying to choose a good encryption mechanism. They all look the same to me. They've all got a load of 3-letter acronyms, and there's about 20 of them. How do you know that you're setting up WireGuard in the right way?
Here's the beautiful part. You don't have to care, because the person who knows how to do this, the person who wrote it, has been really strict and picked just the one for it. And it's fantastic, because I'm not a crypto analyst of any form or other, so I really don't care whether Cha-Cha or Diffie-Hellman elliptic boomerang works better. I just want the fucking best one, and that's what they've done. They've been opinionated and picked the best one, and you're sorted. And the thing is, the server, even though it has a port open, won't respond back unless you respond to it with the correct initial encryption. So you don't have to worry about people battering away on your firewall looking for it, because it just won't answer unless you give them the right stuff.
And it has been independently audited, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. And it's only about 4,000 lines of code as well, whereas if you're taking IPsec or OpenVPN, they're in the hundreds of thousands of lines of code. So, you know, it's just immeasurably better.
And it's not like the client and server model, is it? It's more of a peer-to-peer thing where it's not as clearly defined which one the server is and which the clients are.
Yeah, like your connection's always there. So you're not like turning on your VPN like you would traditionally. You access that IP address that you know is the other device, and then it'll wake up and start talking, and that's it. And it's really quick as well. Like, it's very, very fast. They have graphs where they show that it beats all of the current ones. OpenVPN by some margin and IPsec by a certain amount as well. But the fact that you're not having to actually fire your IPsec tunnel up and wait for that to churn through, and you know, they say the problem is the fact that there's these multiple layers in most VPN protocols where you've got, like, because you have all that choice, that you've got like this matrix of choices of, you know, how we're doing the key sharing, how we're doing all these things. Whereas this is just the one thing, bang, off it goes.
Well, I'm convinced.
I'm convinced. I was going to learn about this.
There's nothing to learn. That's the funny thing.
Well, I was going to set this up, but then they didn't change the rules about filth, and I didn't need to. Other people were asking me about that.
I think, unfortunately, the one downfall is if you are hiding dodgy stuff like that, it apparently deep packet inspection can kind of half figure out stuff, maybe or maybe not. There's all sorts of double natting rules that the likes of NordVPN, who apparently use to try and get past all those sort of things. So be careful what you're using this VPN for.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by DigitalOcean. Go to do.co/LNL. and get $100 credit with 60 days to use it. DigitalOcean offers VMs, or droplets as they call them, with full root access in data centers all over the world with super fast storage and networking. These droplets start from $5 a month and go all the way up to huge amounts of RAM and CPU power, so you can deploy exactly what's right for your project. You can pick from multiple distros and start from a basic installation, or pick from dozens of one-click apps and be up and running in seconds. You can add more block or object storage if you need it, and DigitalOcean has managed databases in Kubernetes, great backups and snapshots, and a really useful Teams feature. So go to do.co/LNL and get started with your $100 credit. That's do.co/LNL. All right, a quick KDE Korner then before we get out of here. The first one, running Plasma Shell with Vulcan.
Yeah, this is really cool. So David Edmondson, he's been experimenting with trying to get Qt 5.15 with a few modifications, and it has inbuilt the render hardware interface. And essentially he put a few dev tools on, enabled a few features, and he got a very snappy desktop going. Now, he's not anyway saying that it's going to be in Plasma 5 probably at all. But Plasma 6 coming could actually be very native in it. So, yeah, pretty cool.
And you've also put in KDE websites update. How many times are they going to fucking update their website?
Well, not all projects hang off the default one. Some of them are sort of their own separate sort of one. And some of these are quite good where the KDE seasons of KDE is coming up and there's a sort of not quite finished, never got finished, but maybe it will web page of doing a specialist page for that. So that's kind of a bit like a follow-on from the Google Summer Code. It's a KDE version. And there's quite a cool one there. And they're looking for mentors. So, they want people to join in. And the documentation on the KDE Tech website has been done up. So there's a way to write a Plasma widget there, which is quite cool. And I've often been thinking of doing one for weather alerts for the Met Éireann in Ireland, because I just get them through the email because I don't obviously have the Google app, because that would be evil and wrong. So I just thought I might do one as a simple experiment. So maybe I'll have to give that a try and see how it goes. And Eliza, the music player's got a new website, as does the Subtitle Composer, which is if you're helping out projects or videos or definitely not downloaded movies off the internet that you shouldn't have, that you're translating into your own language. It's quite a cool application. And Atelier, the 3D printer application, also has a new one, which you've obviously tried, Graham.
I haven't actually. I should definitely try.
What do you use for your 3D printing then?
So I use Openscad for the design stuff, Openscad, and I use Prusa Slicer, which is a fork of Slicer, which is an open source project that creates the kind of the layers that the printer actually prints. It's
been a while since we talked about your 3D printer. Is it packed away on a shelf somewhere?
So just this weekend, I printed a Raspberry Pi 4 case. Over the last few months, it's not being used as much as it was, but like I said before, it's really nice knowing it's there. In the last 6 weeks, I've probably used it for a good few things.
There's a fatal flaw in printing a Raspberry Pi case, and that is the Raspberry Pi 4 gets so fucking hot, it'll probably melt it.
Well, I use PETG, which is pretty good for heat. I mean, you do look into these things a little, and also I've got a huge heatsink, and I was able... So this is... Openscad is basically a scripting engine for creating 3D models, and this is... Somebody else has created a Raspberry Pi 4 case framework, and all you basically do is change a few variables in the top of the script to generate the case that you want to, and it works really well. Another recent example, so in my homebrew setup, I had a nut that just wouldn't tighten enough because I'm now brewing under pressure. That's a whole new geek conversation.
Oh, Jesus.
And there's a bolt toolkit in Openscad where you basically say exactly how, the kind of the pitch of the screw that you need or the bolt that you want to attach to, the height of it. And I was able to craft exactly the kind of nut that I needed to tighten this. And, that saved me so much time and effort and expense.
Wait, you put a plastic nut on top of a bolt?
Yeah. Well, so I use this thing called a Mozilla, which is actually PVA and plastic. And often the best way of creating a seal is to use more plastic. And I'm brewing under like 20 PSI, and it's stuck for 2 or 3 months. And it's much better than the metal bolt that came with it, which is the one I had the problem with.
You know when Homer's the beer baron and the beer barrel explodes in the house and there's a fountain of beer about 100 meters tall and Chief Wiggum's run towards it going, we've got a 419, I need pretzels.
It is quite exciting. It is exciting. It's not in the house.
Oh, that's good. You better get some cider brewing so I can have some.
Yeah, apparently there's a load of apples that haven't been used because we're not drinking cider as much as we should be.
Damn it, Joe.
I'll get right on that, don't worry. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back in 2 weeks. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.